yesterday, when all our troubles seemed so far away. What you're going to hear now is not the reflection I had planned to write this week, but I felt that this was one of those times when news of the world demands our attention. And so the conversation will be a little bit different. My heart breaks from the overt acts of racism that are killing people of color. And my heart breaks seeing journalists arrested for being Black. My heart breaks watching a video of a white woman call the police, knowing full well the danger for a Black man who is simply asking her politely to leash her dog. My heart breaks because I've watched a countless number of videos now of Black men being killed for going to the grocery store, for jogging, for driving a car, dead for the crime of being Black in America. And the pain of my breaking heart is a raindrop in the ocean of pain being experienced by people of color. I really can't imagine. I have no context or container for understanding the suffering and rage and despair and frustration felt by those who know this could happen to them or their loved ones whenever they leave the house and even in their house. It's really just too much. And it's been too much for far too long. And that rebellion in the streets, the torching of buildings, the riots in the cities across America, that is the recourse of the unheard and the disempowered. People who are tired of saying, I can't breathe before they die because a police officer is calmly kneeling on their neck. They're tired of murder being acceptable. And I'm struggling to understand how I've become part of a society that is so extreme, so us and them, that police forces are trained to treat citizens like rats to be exterminated. And when did it become normal to watch people die on camera? So how do we begin to seek that justice, equity, and compassion in human relations when the wound is as deep as a mountain chasm? I think for us, mostly white, mostly privileged, begins with acknowledging just how that deep, deep wound is and how much that deep, deep wound exists. It begins with turning towards the wound, a willingness to see the damage and to hear the pain. It begins with tending to the wound, to suspend our judgments and care for the wounded. We can start by listening to Black men like Canadian E-Talk host Tyrone Edwards express his truth, his anger, and his grief. If you haven't seen this video that's making the rounds, I encourage you to look for his powerful conversation with women on the TV talk show, The Social. And it's on YouTube, and I've shared it on my Facebook feed. Because this isn't just a US problem. White privilege, racial bias is just as embedded in our social systems. This is our work too. And Edwards reminds us that change happens when we take it upon ourselves as a collective obligation. Whatever you do, whatever role or work you have, you don't have to become a full-on activist, but in your own life, you always have the choice to create the change you want, to make space for it, to ask for it, to make it a possibility. You don't have to get it right or be note perfect in how we speak. We just have to care enough to do something, do anything. No one single person can fix this, and no white person is going to be the savior. Even Jesus was a person of color. But each of us can recommit to our work, the work this congregation has been doing to nurture inclusivity, to examine our own bias and prejudice, to commit to learning and becoming an ally. Read a book about racism, watch a video, follow people of color on Twitter and Instagram. Check out the UUA website for racial justice materials. Learn, listen, speak out. The rift of pain, that chasm experienced by people of color, has been carved out by centuries of enslavement and disenfranchisement and ignorance and indifference and systemic embedded prejudice. It will take time and intention to be healed. And we, the people of the chalice, can and should be part of that healing. As Unitarian Universalists, we claim we are committed to justice, equity, and compassion for all. And all means all. Learn, listen, speak out. In the dark times, will there also be singing? Yes, there will also be singing about the dark times. German playwright Bertolt Brecht wrote this in a book of poems he published in 1939. Poems he wrote as he experienced the rise of Nazism. In the dark times, there will also be singing. We need music and art and poetry to help us be human, especially, I think, in times of crisis and confusion. Art holds that essential tension of humanity, that life can be so wonderful and so awful all at the same time. Joy and sorrow forever entwined. And so I encourage all of you to turn to whatever art calls to your spirit. Seek out poems and paintings or films or music that speaks to something deep inside you that helps you feel seen and understood. Art reminds us that being part of human is to feel deeply and gives us ways to express those feelings, to be vulnerable. And in our work, the work of the people of the chalice, to seek justice, equity, and compassion, I also encourage you to seek out the works of people of color expressing their experiences. Be present and open to their stories and to their struggles. Our minds are not often changed by a litany of statistics. After all, racism is well documented. But it's by that experience of feeling, that energetic connection between beings, where vulnerability meets vulnerability. The compassion that rises when we witness someone's pain and choose to stand with them instead of walking away. We are all vulnerable beings in this life together, and we should act like it. This poem comes from my colleague, the Reverend Unger, and it was written 6 years ago when there was another period of upheaval in the United States. Breathe, said the wind. How can I breathe at a time like this when the air is full of smoke, of burning tires, burning lives? Just breathe, the wind insisted. Easy for you to say if the weight of injustice is not wrapped around your throat, cutting off all air. I need you to breathe. I need you to breathe. Don't tell me to be calm when there are so many reasons to be angry, so much cause for despair. I didn't say be calm, said the wind. I said to breathe. We're going to need a lot of air to make this hurricane together. A hurricane is rising. It's time, it's past time to honor the anger and grief of people of color, to take their anguish seriously and act to dismantle systemic oppressions. The hurricane is gathering force, and it's a mighty wind of justice, equity, and compassion for all. And it needs our breath, our intention, our action. As people of the chalice, our commitment is to love and justice. And it is our work to listen, to learn, to speak out, to act, to join the collective to dismantle racism. And it begins with examining our own bias, with learning how to recognize and overcome the prejudices we ourselves have inherited from the system. Anti-racism work is a lifelong process, and it's a part of all those other issues we hold dear, from the climate crisis to poverty to refugees. All of these problems are tied up with treating some group of people as having less value and less worth. We are all in this together. That's the essential notion of our religion. We belong to the earth. We celebrate the mystery. We are part of the interdependent web of all life. And to act like that, to actually live our lives in such a way that expresses that, takes effort. It will take effort. And we will need active hope. And this is the hope that does not rest on optimism or on achieving a particular goal or a perfect society. Active hope rests in intention, the intention to be anti-racist, to choose justice and compassion for all. And we will stumble and fall, and we will have to rest at times. But as long as we keep to our intentions, we will find a way through. We will find our way to a society that is defined less by racism and more by love. If we hold on to active hope, if we listen and learn, if we work together, we will become the change we seek. So I ask that each of us listen to the pain and tend to the wounds of racism. Be an ally. And nourish yourself and your spirit with art and music. Steel yourself with active hope. Breathe deeply. Be part of the mighty hurricane. So say we all.